It's not Joe's fault. Leave him alone. Joe Biden is not someone who should be blamed for what's going on in Afghanistan right now. And frankly, the people who should be blamed for what's going on in Afghanistan right now were around and in power at the time in which that video that I just referenced, that early viral YouTube video, was popular on the internet. In fact, before that. And you know what? Joe Biden is one of those people, but not in his capacity as president. It was in his capacity in the Senate. I believe he was the chair of the Foreign Relations Committee. Or, well, I'm pretty sure he was at the time when the Iraq War started. Maybe he was only the ranking member, as they call it, when Afghanistan went through, because if I remember correctly, the Senate changed hands back and forth between Republicans and Democrats. I think there was a defection from the Republicans, which gave the Democrats a majority somewhere around there. But anyway, Joe Biden was his role in Afghanistan. What he should be blamed for is not pulling the troops out. I applaud that Biden is going through with Trump's plan to pull the troops out. Although I will be critical of him in one respect, and that's that he's waited too long. Trump, I went over this, very extensively. There was no YouTube channel that I followed that at all covered the negotiations as they were unfolding between Zalmay Khalilzad and the Taliban. Zalmay Khalilzad was appointed by Trump to go negotiate the end of the war in Afghanistan, and he did that. And the deal that he struck was that by this past May, the U.S. was going to be out, and from the date that the deal was signed until May, the Taliban promised not to, fight, and to just, hey, let's chill out, let's have a ceasefire. I don't know if it wasn't a ceasefire. I don't know if they called that officially, but there wasn't any fighting, and we didn't have American troops getting killed, left and right anymore. And the Taliban held up their end of the bargain. Clearly, through the date that Trump had negotiated with them, that Khalilzad had negotiated with them, they were on their best behavior. Now, in the summertime, since then, and really intensifying in the last couple of weeks, the Taliban have been all the rage, engaging in the reconquista of Afghanistan. And now we have people here in the U.S., all upset and saying, oh my gosh, Joe he's running away from a fight, they're pushing him out and all this nonsense. And, it really is a PR disaster that didn't have to be this bad. Joe Biden, for some reason, thought PR-wise, it would be better for the U.S. to officially withdraw from Afghanistan on 9/11, 2021, 20 years after the fall of the World Trade Center. But in reality, it's going to be much, much worse, PR-wise, because now it looks like he's, in retreat. Even though, the Taliban were going to have taken back the country by this point anyway. It just would have been better if, when things were still peaceful, and Joe Biden went along with the deal, he could have pulled the troops out and said, hey, everything's fine, and then things could have collapsed after the U.S. left. Now things are collapsing as the U.S. is leaving, which, it's just, these are semantic things. It doesn't really matter, but the way that it's perceived by people here is a little different, and politically it's dumb of Biden and his people. But in any real sense, doesn't matter either way. As long, this is going to happen, no matter when the U.S. left. The U.S. could have been there for 40 years, could have been there for 10 years, it could have been there for 5 years. This was going to be the end result. And if the U.S. had been there for 0 years, if the U.S. had never invaded, this would have been the result because the Taliban was already in charge there. And so I don't want to hear a damn thing from, any of these Republicans, certainly people who were at all in support of Trump, trying to trash Biden over pulling out of Afghanistan, because I actually heard on talk radio multiple people saying, hey, there's a reason why Obama and Trump both ran on getting us out of Afghanistan and do it. It's because they're smart and they figured out and they realized, oh, you can't pull out of Afghanistan. And that's why they didn't do it. And it's like, how much of an idiot are you? You don't even know that there was already a deal struck between Trump and the Taliban. If Trump had gotten reelected, he would have been out sooner than Joe Biden was. And so I don't get it. I mean, this is the one decent thing that Joe Biden will probably do for his entire presidency, perhaps his entire life. I don't know of anything else that he's good that he's done in the past. I guess back when Obama was president, Biden did oppose the Afghan surge. So, maybe by that point he had already figured out, hey, this whole Afghanistan war, not really working out. Maybe we should cut our losses. But ultimately, he lost in that internal fight in the administration. The Afghan surge went ahead under Obama, so I can't really count that as a good thing that Joe Biden did. So this is it. As far as, when you add up the balance sheet of Joe Biden's legacy, you've got all of the cons. This is the one pro. And I think it would have been just as easy for him. In fact, I think it would have been easier for him to completely shred Trump's deal with the Taliban and not pull out at all and just continue the status quo, because nobody in America ever thinks about the Afghan war. We haven't heard about it in years, at least ordinary people. Nobody talks about it. It wasn't hurting him politically to be in Afghanistan, but it may potentially hurt him in the way in which he's pulling it out, since he's doing it in a dumb way. But there was always some risk of there being of people criticizing him for pulling out, because you could never. It's always too soon. If you ask the pundits, the chicken hawks sitting in Washington, who of course don't have to fight and die over there. And so I will, for this one news cycle, happily give Joe Biden a win and say, good job, Joe. Now, if only you could do this in every other context. If only you could bring the rest of the troops home. I don't think you're going to do that. I highly doubt that. But hey, at least you brought them home from one country. Or, supposedly. It's not complete yet. But, at this point, the country is unraveled so much, it would be so ridiculous for the U.S. to turn around and try and reconquer Afghanistan after, the Taliban could conquer the capital as soon as today. So that's about all I have to say on this matter. It's a pretty simple one. Afghanistan is something I've been discussing since this channel was created. I was always following the steps towards the peace process and the U.S.'s pull out of Afghanistan. I knew that this would be the ultimate end point. I said that, going back in my videos now for years, and I only held out a remote sense of hope that this day would ever come. But hey, here we are, and it's nice to have one thing to be happy about, I guess. So with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.